our heart is to convene the community to do something that is bigger than only one of us could do, as I just mentioned. And so, what would it look like if we came together and we ignited one another, we inspired one another, we imagined together a transformed city by loving our leaders, loving our pastors, loving our schools, loving our families, and loving through prayer, which are the 5 pillars of a flourishing community.
Thank you for tuning in to the Rescue Mission podcast, where we discuss real topics that affect real people. I've got Matt with me today, and we've got a special staff guest with us. We've got Dave Mosier with us. Ooh. Dave is a philanthropy officer. He's also our church connection guy. So today, as we're talking about the importance of the local church, the idea just came to me. I was like, man, we got to have Dave on this episode. Dave is one of the chattiest people I know. And so that's the kind of people you want on the podcast. The more talkative, the better. And as I say the word chatty, it almost sounds kind of insulting.
Well, I was going to say, it's funny because you are one of the more chatty people that I know.
Interesting.
And if like a very chatty triangle here.
It's a compliment. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I said it and I thought, I don't want that to sound. Anyway, we're talking about the importance of the local church. We were just talking about how we keep this podcast conversational. We've got Geoff King with us. Geoff is the CEO of Love Fort Wayne. Geoff, how are you today?
I'm doing really good. I'm so glad to be here. This is a fun setting already, man. We're not even swinging the bat yet.
We're going to get some stuff up on the walls, I think.
Yeah.
Right? Some posters of like 80s.
Oh,
like the DeLorean from Back to the Future.
Nice.
That is way before my
Some
time.
Chicago Bulls
in the mix. We'll get some blacklight posters.
Okay.
Right. It's gonna be awesome.
He's got a vision.
This is when Jay gives me the nod of like, we need to get this on track. Well, Geoff, I've really enjoyed over the last, I don't know how many months, getting to know you a little bit. Geoff and I sit in a couple of the same rooms, and that's a lot of fun. Geoff is one of those guys who wears a bunch of hats.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so he's got a pretty unique perspective around our city. And in a lot of ways, right, all I want to do with some of these questions is like open the gate and let you do whatever you want to do.
Sounds good.
So give us a sense of like, what are those hats? What's your perspective in our town? How do you see the city of Fort Wayne and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah. Thanks for that question. And thanks for having me again, guys. I'm super excited. It's, when I think about the perspectives, my personal perspectives on Fort Wayne, it starts with me at home. Like I have 3 kids in 3 different schools. So it's like I have a high schooler, I have a middle schooler, I have a kindergartner. And so, yeah.
Is that why you look tired?
Maybe that's why I look tired. Yeah. So it's like, you get the unique perspective of what's happening in all of their different situations. And, serving, I serve on a committee with Youth for Christ down at City Life. And so my daughter's connected there. So I get to see that perspective of what's happening kind of in that area with our students and being able to serve them at spring break this past year. And what's going on in the life of a young person, starting with my young person, my 15-year-old, and then thinking about the stories of young people throughout Northeast Indiana and what they're going through, is the hangups, the trials, the history of their life, and then leaning in with them in those places of hurting and saying that you are seen, you are loved, you are cared for. When I'm in that setting and kind of milling that all the way through to my son saying, oh my goodness, I can't believe we have a 6-year-old and what does that look like? So that's one perspective. I think, when it comes to just time and serving with some local nonprofits, a nonprofit that serves women that are in the sex industry or transitioning from that and being able to, that's a newer thing for me. And letting my heart have the empathy and break and see them as the Lord sees them is like a really unique thing for me that I'm learning in this season. Serving with the FCA for lots of different years, and I have a background in sports ministry. So just looking at that and what's happening in our community. And my mom, I love my mama, and she's got a nonprofit that she's been serving with. It's new, but it was with another entity for her 16 of her 17 years serving. So looking at the housing communities that she works in with women and with children and early onset education. And then finally, at Love Fort Wayne, I just think that our connectivity to the community, which is really about what can God do in our city. He's given us an assignment collectively to do together so that he can do his work and transform the city. But looking at schools, looking at families, pastors, leaders, and prayer as the root of that, it positively puts me in various spaces where I can learn and just see what God is doing in so many different areas, and then seeing people say, yeah, this is bigger than just me and just my entity and just my organization and just my nonprofit, my ministry and church. It literally will take us to convene together with humble hearts and open hearts. It will take us doing it. And so I just get a unique opportunity just to sit in those different settings, and I count it as a blessing. I really do.
Yeah, give us the nickel tour of what Love Fort Wayne is.
Yeah, Love Fort Wayne is a citywide movement. Here it is, the mission statement: to imagine, inspire, and ignite transformation through God's love. And so we are essentially, our heart is to convene the community to do something that is bigger than only one of us could do, as I just mentioned. And so what would it look like if we came together and we ignited one another, we inspired one another, we imagined together a transformed city by loving our leaders, loving our pastors, loving our schools, loving our families, and loving through prayer, which are the 5 pillars of a flourishing community. So the backside of the nickel of it is really like Harvard School of Flourishing they talked about what makes a community flourish, and workspaces, faith communities, families, and schools. And, the team, even before I came on, and said, oh, we don't have to veer too far from that. We see that God's love could be prominent and life-changing in those 4 pillars. And, we added prayer because what's the foundation to the work that we're called to do, but yet on our knees. And so that's the snapshot of Love Fort Wayne. And we really aren't here to create new things. Again, we feel like our mantle and assignment is to say, let's convene people where their hearts are already moved towards those things, to say, what could we do? What should we do? What will we do to love people in those 5 areas?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Cool. Well, we want to get a snapshot of what your connectivity with the local church looks like.
Yeah.
And then just to like telegraph this whole episode is just to figure out how that connects to the greater success of the city, right? We always talk about we hope Fort Wayne is a successful city. This is great for Fort Wayne, but Fort Wayne is made up of it's not just this monolithic thing, right? It's made up of a bunch of individuals, a bunch of groups, a bunch of stuff like that. So give us a sense of at what points you are connected with the local church.
Yeah, personally for us, church community is really, really important. I served in the local church for 6 years and an executive pastoral capacity.
Recovering pastor.
Yeah, Amen. Yeah,
still working.
I'm the odd one out. I'm the only one that's not a pastor.
No, that's not true though. Because you've been in several pastoral roles.
I've been a worship leader before.
Yeah, we know that. Yeah,
we recognize. We smell our own.
That's right. Yeah, we know. Yeah, that's part of it, man. It's like serving in the local church, like schooling wise. That I wanted to be a youth pastor. I wanted to do outreach ministry, and so I went to school for that, adolescent studies and youth ministry, trying to figure out what it would look like to be connected to the local church, either via nonprofit, sports ministry, whatever it is, outreach ministry, youth ministry. Those things never happened, but eventually down the road, after serving in some nonprofit and social work-based ministry, I ended up in the local church. I have connectivity there, and I think currently just attending church, is an important part of my family. Being in community with other believers is vitally important, but also looking at the local church and saying the local church has a role to play in the flourishing of the community.
Absolutely.
It's super, super important. And I think about it this way. It's, the ministry staff, the church itself, it touches the hundreds and the thousands weekly.
Yeah.
And those hundreds and thousands then go out into our community and live, work, and play. And so the way in which the local church convenes, the way that it loves, the way that it sees, the ways that it stands for just things, the way that it it just moves about, it actually has huge impact, because the man or the woman, the boy or the girl that is sitting there in the church, being served by the church, cared for by the church, learning from those who preach and teach the gospel. Again, they're going back out and they're teaching in an elementary room. They're serving in our hospitals. They're serving in our nonprofit communities and business. And so the health of the local church is vitally important, because it disperses itself out into the community in so many different ways. And so for me, that's my heart of connectivity to the local church. And I don't know about you guys, there is this thing that's been in my heart in regards to the temperature of the environment of the community should be set by the local church with Christ-like eyes and hands and feet. But sometimes it's the other way around. Like the temperature of the church is set by what's happening in society and community, and then we're left floundering with what should we do when we have the gospel and the essence of the gospel at our fingertips to understand it and then live it out in our community. So that's my heart for the local church. And that's, where I'm seeing more and more connectivity to it. It's just trying to get to know guys and gals and folks that are serving in local church, and say, where can we lean in? What are the things that you're sensing? What are you hearing? What is God asking for you to do in your community? But for me, the important part is like, where can we do it together? And that takes work, man. It takes trust building. So many things with their denominational lines that we have to look into, but say, do we believe in Jesus and what he does and what he's done and what he's doing? And let that be the thing that keeps the dividing wall of hostility torn down and not built up heavier. That's my heart in regards to connection to the local church.
Well, this is for both of you, as I grab Dave and bring you into the middle of this, that you both are working with a wide variety of, when we talk about the church, right? It's not a tame animal, right? It doesn't play within, it doesn't color within the lines and all of those things. So what's the challenge of talking about, because when you talk about the church, what do you think of? And when you're dealing with all across those lines, whatever those lines are, what's that look like?
Well, it is people that love Jesus. Worshiping Jesus is my perception of the local church, and that has a lot of flavors for sure. A lot of traditions in some spaces, and also freedoms in others too. So I am very open in my interpretation of the local church and my love for the local church. I like spaces that don't look like me, feel like me, and act like me, that help educate me and inspire me. Like I was going to share with Geoff and his leadership with Love Fort Wayne, my recent experiences at the prayer gatherings have been remarkable, transformational for me personally. So cool. The people that I meet, that I pray with, and then get prayed for is incredible. The worship, the singing is always amazing. With the different varieties. Tuesdays was off the charts, man. Cool, that was so fun. And the representation of leaders in our community in those spaces blows my mind. I feel privileged to be in a space with CEOs, presidents of organizations, pastors, servants, children, across the board. It is an inclusive community. And for me, who Love Fort Wayne is and the family they are including is very much representative of our local church in the region.
So just to color that in a little bit, the Tuesday evening was a citywide event where praise and worship was happening for the purpose of, some of our priorities: unity in the church, a prayerful community, and the prosperity and the peace of our city. Right?
That's right.
So what makes how do all of those individual people, individual churches, individual traditions, what does it look like to try to bring them together?
I don't think the picture when I think about like the human perspective, my strength of trying to bring it together, I'm like, it's super hard. It's a bunch of jigsaw pieces, but I think when we release it a little bit, I think what I've learned this year is it's really the invitation to be in prayer space is like has been the springboard unto, okay, when we boil this down and we take off maybe some of the, I mean, it's beautiful, all the different traditions. I don't want to take away from any tradition, history, background, denominational, no, at all. But when we peel those things back and you get guys and gals into a space and say, we're going to seek the face of the God that we know, that we love, that we trust. We're gonna lean on not our own understanding, but we're gonna seek the face of the Lord together. We're gonna pray. That has really created this, and it does, this level playing field of people just saying, okay, we'll come together and pray.
Yep.
We'll come together and pray. And we've seen that across Catholic and Protestant lines. We've seen it evangelical, mainline, whatever you want to call it, Pentecostal. People have come together to pray. And I think that is one of the main things that I say, this is what coming together looks like. We've got to start with a commonality, and that is we will seek the face of the Father in prayer. I think another thing from our perspective is when I think about pastors and their connectivity to the local churches, we want to love pastors well, but how can I love something fully without gaining the understanding of what it is and what they need? And so for us, it's creating those spaces. When I was a pastor, I'm like, I didn't want much. I really sometimes just wanted to be around another guy or that just kind of knew what I knew, what I was going through. But they're pastoring, associate level, lead level, whatever it may be. And we can sit there and laugh and have fun and joke, but also we know some of the stresses. We know the things that we have to, that we're leading in, and the hurts and the things that we're carrying, because we see it happening not only in our local church context, but in the community as a whole. And I think for us, it's really creating those spaces where that can happen, where folks can just come together, and not just to gather just for nothing, but say, hey, we want to love on you. We want to feed you, but we want to listen to you. What do you need in the season that feels like love, that will support you? Okay. Yeah, that feels like love, that will support you. Because you've been entrusted with the gospel to preach and to teach. And who else will hear it unless those who have been raised up to preach it and teach it, as the word that says. And so for us, that's what bringing the church together is, starting with those pastors and say, we love you. We want to listen. What does love look like and feel like to you? And then let this advisory team of people take that back, pray over it, and say, all right, we're going to come back to you after we've listened to you and say, do these things feel like love? All right, now we're going to work together to make sure that they happen.
I believe there's a hunger for inclusion too. There really is. When I'm at a Love Fort Wayne prayer gathering, I sense that any sort of perceived differences are diminished and potentially even off the table. I mean, I love the encouragement to sit in different spaces. The way it was set up Tuesday without tables was a little awkward, while it was still good because we were encouraged to mingle and move around, and the focus of loving neighbors. I mean, you guys give practical application to what you're leading us in and through, and it was transformational. We were praying for zip codes. I didn't anticipate that, but I was praying with two gals. One was in the 06, another in the 07. I'm in the 08. So we're covering like a decent part of our city in prayer. And I didn't anticipate it, and the Spirit's still moving. Come on. I mean, it was incredible. What I received was divine appointments. The gal said for the next 48 hours, still living in it. And here we are, so it was beautiful. Yeah. I always walk away refreshed, renewed, and full with that hunger for inclusion, man. It's beautiful.
Well, I think unintentionally you got my question right where I got it wrong. Right? I was asking when I think, sometimes wrongly, when I think about bringing the church together, I have this sense of like everybody gets poured into the same bowl and becomes this mixture. But you said puzzle. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
In a puzzle, you don't have to make all the pieces the same dimensions.
Yeah.
Right? But what you're trying to do when you're bringing them together is you're trying to, you're creating something that is greater when fitted together, and when is witnessed by those around, hopefully looks beautiful.
Yeah.
That's right.
Hopefully
That's
you
very-
go, oh,
Yeah.
that's what that is.
That's right.
Yeah.
When you're looking individually at those things and you're like, that's a mess.
Yeah, that's right.
Mhm.
Yeah,
You
that's
know?
right. That's right.
And,
Yeah, I love that. I have a neighbor who, he's just a cool dude, and he was talking to me. So I had very short in 30 seconds. At one point, like a year and a half ago, he asked me, he saw me at coffee shops a lot, and he goes, "What do you do? What do you do?" I'm like,
I drink coffee.
Yeah, I'm just all around. I'm never doing anything, am I? I
feel
told
that
him,
way every day.
Yeah. And so I told him, I was like, well, by licensure or degree, I'm a pastor. And he goes, I never met one of those before. Now at the coffee shop were 3 other pastors. 2 of them work in nonprofit ministry. They have worked in local church before. And there was a lead pastor there that they were meeting with. So, and they knew him. So I'm like, you just didn't know, which is the beauty of it. Right. And, so that's a background, but he started coming down to my house a little bit more, asking me about that. Beautiful. Like the Holy Spirit's opening up a lane of conversation for us. And, but he said to me, I was in a restaurant and I heard some people talking, and they were talking about the church. I could just tell the church. And he goes, it sounded really bureaucratic to me. And I was like, and I'm just like, but it didn't, he came to me to ask me more about my perspective and what was going on and so on and so forth. But it's like, it's not supposed to be that way. And so I bring that up, Matt. It's like, we really want to be, for me, the church is like, there's different shapes and sizes, but we are one body.
Amen.
And when we do come together, we want it to be this beautiful picture for those who do not know the Lord, like my neighbor, to say, oh, I see how it comes together.
Yeah.
Look at this picture.
Yep.
And then that's up to the Holy Spirit and that person decision they're going to make about, but for the church to come together so that next time he overhears something, that's not the first thing that comes out of his mouth.
Yeah.
When he comes and talks to me, I heard these pastors talking about doing things together, and even in spite of difference of what they were thinking was happening in the world.
Well, that's when, when we talk about these worship events, or when we talk about even meeting at a coffee shop, or we talk about whatever it might be, when you say, what do you do?
Yeah.
You're like, well, I'm kind of doing it right now.
Yeah.
Like, what are you guys going to do after that worship event? What did we do?
What did we do?
Right?
Yeah.
We got more than a couple of people to be in a room together and look in the very same direction at somebody who we're hoping to all follow, right?
That's right. Amen.
Yeah.
Right? So you grew up here, right?
Yeah, I did. Born and raised.
So talk to me a little bit about the difference between what, quote unquote, the church looked like 5, 7, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Versus what does it look like in the past 2, 3, 4 years?
Yeah, that's right.
Because there've been people. We could call some people out, but we won't just yet. Right? But there've been people who've been stirring the pot.
Right.
Or maybe Jesus is using people as big old spoons to stir the pot. What's going on?
Yeah,
at that from that vantage point, right?
Yeah, I think that they're personally, if you go back 6, 7, 8 years, I'd love to get you guys' perspective on this and your experiences with it. It was like we were still in kind of like the attractional church model, gosh, this is not a stone throw, but it's just like, okay, said person comes to church and they take this class, this class, this class. You've done it. Now we have discipled them unto continual growth in Jesus.
Easy, right?
Right. It's just easy. And I think right before the P word, the pandemic. So because it's wild, right? Like we're 3.5 years.
Don't worry, we can beep that up.
Yeah. So it's like, we're 3.5 years almost removed from like when it started. That time is flying. And so 3 years going into that, where I was at, it was like I was starting to hear more people, and we know the names, pastors and leaders that were saying like, what would it look like for the church to be the church? We still need ministry staff, but what would it look like for the men and women, the boys and girls that attend the church, that are part of the capital C church, to move beyond even volunteerism? Start there, but what would it look like for them to hold, and for people for us to greater understand the gifts of the Spirit that are within our church, within our pews now, and let the body lead? What would it look like to start to experience Kairos and say, like, hey, small group curriculum stuff is great, but like let's worship, let's get into the word, let's listen to what's God saying. How is he asking for us to respond? Like, it was starting to shake the river of life of the church, move flowing out of the church. That stuff was starting to happen, and it was like, no. No way. You're wrong. You're crazy. Don't talk about prophecy. Don't talk about being apostolic. Don't talk about it is about this. People get mad at me with this, but you asked me to come on. So it's like, it's my personal relationship with Jesus is what this salvation is all about, but that's only half of it. And we know that. And so when people started to say that it's beyond that, that is part of it. It is your story, your salvation, but you have been entrusted with this gospel and this love. You've been entrusted with much, as the Lord says, like, go and live that out at the well. And when somebody's holding stones, and when somebody is laying on their mat, and when somebody is on the side of the road, like, go. It's Matthew 25. It's like, go. And so that was the stirring. And I think now, this yearning, I call it holy discontentment. People are just like, it's like, oh, I feel that something in us, the Lord is moving something in us. And I'm like, it's that, it's that, it's the great command. It's the great serve. It's the great commission. It's those, the great care. Like, it's those things. Yeah. That is what you're feeling. It's it's living unto the holiness that we've been called to. And since you don't really see it happening all the time, there's this positive discontentment. It's like, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this. I feel like that's happening in the church, but we are who we are. We've created some systems that keep us from doing those things. And there are just some structures too, depending on the church size or the demographic, that, sometimes to give some of those things up and to look unto doing something new and fresh, and believing that the Lord is doing something new and fresh. It's scary, man. It just is. We see it biblically. Different stories when God is doing something fresh, and when God is doing something fresh and new. So I think that was happening about 6 or 7 years ago, and now we're sitting in it, and people are saying, no more. We're going to move. We're going to move and work.
That's good. Yeah. There's a call to action for sure that I think some have chose to sit on or pass off, and many are awakening to, okay, I can own this. Yeah. I can move in this spirit. I can be a disciple, one step at a time, with some mentorship and some partnership and some help. I mean, what you're doing with Love Fort Wayne is a platform, prayer and worship. Come and connect. If you can love somebody well in this space, think about your neighborhood. Step on out in your workplace. Gaining some confidence is, as an individual follower of Jesus, that collectively we need each other. Right. Man, we need each other. And somewhat kind of, I guess, releasing the church in some ways, in Jesus' name, for his glory. Yeah.
Well, Dave, you came out, and Jay, to a certain extent, you as well. We all have come from somewhere else to Fort Wayne.
Yes.
What are some of the unique things maybe that you guys see that maybe Geoff is totally blind to? We need Geoff needs help. Yeah. I guess is what I'm saying.
So where I came from, they had a collection of pastors that were attempting to do the same thing in my hometown. But their approach to it, and as I'm reflecting on this in this interview, their approach to it was logistics, meetings, surveys, getting together and figuring out how they're going to do it. And the whole underlying theme that's coming out of this episode, from what I'm hearing, is prayer. Is it starting out with prayer? And looking back, there wasn't a lot of that happening. It was a worldly approach to unity. To be completely blunt about it. And I experienced the Love Fort Wayne prayer gathering. I think I led worship at one in March. I think it was March, so I led worship at one. And there is a sense of unity in there. And I don't use that word lightly, but you can just tell that these people that gather together in this room are all about Jesus. And I think you could sense that unity in the room because it was all about prayer. It wasn't us. Nobody preached a sermon. There was nothing glamorous about it. It was a lot of people getting together to seek the face of Jesus. One guy was at the, what was the revival called in Kentucky?
Oh, down at Asbury.
Yeah, Asbury.
Yeah.
And the only portion of it that somebody was sharing was just this guy sharing what he experienced, a movement in prayer at Asbury. And so as I reflect on this and I listen to it, I think it's not only applicable for churches, but for believers. If we're going to experience unity together, it's not going to be through logistics. It's not going to be through meetings. It's not going to be from a worldly approach. But like Matt said, it's going to come from us looking in the same direction, trying to become like Jesus together, because this is something that's entirely new to me. If your tie was a different color where I came from, like we couldn't see eye to eye. If we were, I mean, churches didn't think that it was possible to get along. So I think it's encouraging to me, and it can be encouraging to anybody that's listening to this episode. Like, we're not waxing eloquent. There are churches in Fort Wayne that do their services differently, that have minor beliefs that are different. This isn't an effort to create one big ginormous church in Fort Wayne that everybody goes to at the Allen County Coliseum.
Yeah,
but
right.
it's a body of believers coming together, and it's possible is what I'm seeing. And I think part of that is, as we talked about the pandemic was a purifying fire. There were so many silly things that we did in the church, and I'll use the word silly because they were in hindsight, that just got burned away in the pandemic. And what we're seeing now is recovering from that and coming back from that and saying it is possible to have unity. It is possible to get past these small things and seek the face of Jesus together. So coming from where I came from, it's encouraging to me to know that this isn't just a crazy dream that you can have to see a unified church, but it's a possibility that you can achieve through prayer.
Yep.
So if somebody wants to connect with Love Fort Wayne and keep up with what you guys are doing, support Love Fort Wayne, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, I would say visit our website, lovefortwayne.com. Pretty simple. We've got that's going to share a lot about our mission and vision. And you can fill out a contact request there. That way you can get on the mailing list, and we do seasonal updates via mailing list and what's happening with prayer. Follow us on social media, Love Fort Wayne, Indiana, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and we do a lot of posts there. But take that step. We want folks that want to be a part of advisory teams. So if you have a heart for to love leaders, to love families, to love schools, to love through prayer, to love pastors, reach out to us via our website and see if there's a space for you. Again, we don't want to create a whole bunch of brand new programs. That's not the goal of it. It's to say, hey, we're all doing something. We all have a heart for this. What can we do? These are a pillar of a flourishing community. If we love like Jesus in them, it would set an example for all those folks. And can I say one last thing is those teams are not all believers. It's really interesting. Like,
wait, what?
Yeah, isn't that wild? Like, there are a few people on some advisory teams that I think they've seen, Christians, this person is an ED of this nonprofit. This person is a CEO of this nonprofit, yet they're at the table to love families well. Okay, I can be about that because they see the example of they have to raise their own dollars still. They're running their own program, but they're literally going to come together and say, we're going to create something together that helps ensure that parents flourish so that their families flourish is what our Love Our Families is focusing on. So they're at the table, and they're getting a glimpse of what unity looks like, of what collaboration looks like, and they like it.
It's great.
And so, if you're curious about what it means to have a relationship with Jesus, come on out, man. Come be a part, learn more about what we're doing, because it's not just for the body of believers in Fort Wayne. It's for the people of Fort Wayne. That's what our heart is.
Well, Geoff, thanks so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thanks,
I enjoyed this conversation with
Same
all
here.
you guys.
Wonderful.
We'll have to do this again. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode of the Rescue Mission Podcast, we ask you to consider leaving a review, subscribing, following whatever platform you're on. We'd love to have you keep up with us and what's going on with the Rescue Mission Podcast. Thanks for listening.